Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers broke sports last week when they signed a 10-year, $700 million contract, which is everywhere being called the largest contract in sports history. And I do plan on making a video about sort of the different salary caps and financial fair play rules in different leagues and in different sports. And a huge thank you to Yak Nose for giving me this idea in a recent comments section. But before we do that, I wanted to just have a look at some numbers with you guys and establish different ways of looking at earnings for an athlete. And so I want you to let me know in the comments what you think is sort of the fairest way to compare athletes when it comes to contracts and earnings, in different sports and we'll get to it. You'll see what I mean when we get into the video. But let's start off by taking a page from the inspiration for this video, Shohei Ohtani, and let's look at the top 5 largest playing contracts in sports history based solely on the amount of money that the contract is for. So, at number 5, we have Karim Benzema and Al Ittihad. Now, if you're outside of the world of soccer, you might not be super aware of a recent trend where some bigger names, including another guy on this list, are basically being offered huge money to go play in Saudi Arabia. And this really kicked off around this time last year. And, so far we've seen particularly some older players who've won their trophies and are sort of seeing retirement looming on the horizon. And so they're essentially going over there for the money. And the Saudis are willing to pay up because, well, first of all, because they have the money, but also because, it's good attention on their league. And so Karim Benzema is one of those players. He's 35 now, maybe 36 by the time you're watching this video. And he's won, the UEFA Player of the Year and the Ballon d'Or. He's got 4 La Liga trophies, 3 Ligue 1 titles, and I think 5 Champions League trophies. So he's very, very well decorated. And he was offered a 2-year contract at Al Ittihad for $436 million, which is the 5th biggest contract in history when you look at that figure. Now, at number 4, we have an American football player. This contract was signed in 2020 for 10 years, and it's worth $450 million. And can you guess who that is? It is Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this was actually a 10-year extension on his existing contract. So when the deal was first announced, it was reported as being 10 years for $503 million. But we later found out that that amount of the $503 million actually included the final years of his contract that he was already under, that they extended, which lasted until the end of the 2021 season. And so it was the money that was remaining on that contract. So the 10-year extension is technically started in 2021 and was worth $450 million. Now, let's hop back to Saudi Arabia for number 3. I mentioned before that sort of Saudi trend started around this time last year, and that's because the English Premier League has a January transfer window every year where basically you're only allowed to transfer, or in other words, trade players during certain times of the year, and one of those times is January. So just before January of 2023, before anyone else could try and snag Cristiano Ronaldo, the Saudi club Al Nassr, they signed him on a 2.5-year, $536 million contract. By the way, I'm giving all of these numbers in US dollars just to make comparison easier. But that is not the biggest soccer contract that's ever been signed. That honor belongs to the number 2 athlete on this list, and that is the GOAT, Lionel Messi. Now, he signed a 4-year contract with Barcelona, FC Barcelona, in 2017. That brought him to 2021, and that was for $674 million. He had played for Barcelona for their first team since 2004. Before that, he came from their youth team, their youth academy. And so even before signing this contract in 2017, he had won 4 Champions Leagues, 8 La Liga titles. He won 2 more on this contract that we're talking about. He had 5 Ballon d'Or at the time. He's the all-time top scorer for any player at any one club in the world. So you can understand why he would boast the honor of the biggest soccer contract of all time. Now, of course, he's a World Cup winner. He's just the ultimate soccer player. And finally, at number 1, obviously, we opened the video by talking about this. The biggest contract in sports history is Shohei Ohtani with the Dodgers. He signed a 10-year, $700 million contract. But this is where it gets interesting, right? Because, as you may have heard, $680 million of that contract is being deferred until 2033 when the contract is up. So Ohtani will be receiving $2 million per year for the 10 years that he's, that's the contract's duration. And then the rest, as I said, will be paid out at $68 million over the following 10 years, so until, I guess, 2043. So let's look at this a different way, and let's re-rank our athletes based on their average per year while they're playing out their contract, right? And an important note here, Ohtani would just break the top 5 if we were to divide that $700 million contract over 10 years. So let's pretend he's being paid $70 million per year for the next 10 years rather than $2 million. He would just crack the top 5 and be in the number 5 spot. But let's spice things up a little bit and kick him out of the rankings. So at number 5, we actually have Giannis. Let me get this right. Antetokounmpo. I think that was it. He actually, in our previous ranking, just looking at the contract amount, would only come in at number 66. But that's because it's a much shorter contract, right? He signed for $186 million, and that is set to begin in 2025, so it's not his current contract. But the catch is that it's only, and I say only, compared to the Ohtani contract, it's only a 3-year contract. So that comes to an average of $62 million per year, which is just enough to crack the top 5 once we've kicked out Ohtani. In 4th place, we have a boxer, Canelo Alvarez. Now, this guy is incredibly rich. Boxing has huge potential for endorsement deals when you're a big star. And there's also purse winnings to take into account, right? So, where in other sports you're paid to play, win or lose, in combat sports you get paid significantly better if you actually win. And there are also many different bonuses in place. But beyond all that, Canelo signed a deal with DAZN, which is a sports streaming platform, in 2018 for 5 years. And that deal was worth $365 million, which comes to $73 million per year, which again beats out that theoretical $70 million per year for Ohtani. And under this contract, Canelo's next 11 fights would be broadcast in the US by DAZN. Now, Canelo eventually negotiated out of that contract, which would have been over this current year, but he left the contract early. Now, in 3rd, 2nd, and 1st places, we have those soccer players that we mentioned earlier. So there's Messi's contract, which is worth $168.5 million per year. And Benzema and Ronaldo's contracts are each worth $214.5 million per year. Ronaldo's is just longer by half a season, so it comes to the same amount per year, per season. But that gives us a third way to rank these contracts, right? Because I mentioned that Canelo was on an 11-fight contract with DAZN. Meanwhile, there are 30 games, I think, per season in the Saudi Pro League. And we'll assume that these guys would play a minimum of one match in each of Saudi Arabia's domestic cup competition each year. So where does that leave us on a sort of per game, per event payout? Well, in 5th place, we actually get a new name in the rankings. And that is another one that hit the news this year. And it's Joe Burrow. He signed a 5-year contract with the Cincinnati Bengals worth $275 million. My cat cannot believe it. So, Joe Burrow, 5-year contract with the Bengals worth $275 million. Now, divided over just a regular season in the NFL, assuming Burrow plays each one of those games, he would be making over $3.2 million per game. For the sake of conversation, if we pretend Ohtani was being paid $700 million over the 10-year contract, a 162 game season would pay out $432,000 per game. Now, of course, he wouldn't be pitching every game. Let's say he's pitching 32 games in the season, right, which is like 1 in 5. That's still $2 million per game, which is less than Joe Burrow is getting paid. And $432,000 per game actually puts him down in the 40s or the 50s in this rank. But enough about those guys. The rest of the names on this list we've already seen. Messi is in number 4 with around $4.5 million per game. Ronaldo and Benzema are getting over $7 million per game. And Canelo, on the DAZN contract just for streaming rights, was being paid $33 million per fight. And I won't start getting into like the pay per minute rank, but just for the sake of it, let's say Canelo is being paid $33 million for a 12-round fight that goes the distance. That translates to 36 minutes of fighting, which is a third of a soccer game almost. Can you do the math here? Canelo is being paid just under $1 million per minute for the streaming rights while he's in the boxing ring. That's over $15,000 per second. Now, if we look at his recent record, a lot of his fights have been going to decision, but one of those fights on the DAZN contract ended after 3 rounds. So that's $3.7 million per minute that he was fighting that fight. It's nuts. Anyway, let's look at one more way of ranking athlete earnings, and that is by total estimated earnings, right? Because we're talking now not only player contracts, but purses, endorsement deals, businesses, you name it. Their total estimated earnings. So first, we'll just look at the 2023 numbers, and then we'll go on to look at the top 5 richest athletes of all time. to wrap up this video. So in 2023, according to Forbes, Canelo made a total of $110 million. Then LeBron, we finally get LeBron here, he made a total of $119.5 million. Benzema is at number 3 with $120 million. Then Messi with $130 million. I could get into the Apple deal, the Adidas deals. His contracts this year were nuts. They were all over the place. And the highest paid athlete, or the highest earning athlete this year, was Cristiano Ronaldo with $136 million. Now, if we move those numbers around to see who made the most money purely from endorsements, it's a different story. Steph Curry shows up on the list for the first time at number 5 with $52 million in endorsements. Then Messi with $65 million. In third place is LeBron with $75 million in endorsements. Then Ronaldo with $90 million. But another new name shows up all of a sudden in first place. And that's because this is someone who I don't think played any sports this year. And that is Roger Federer, who earned $95 million in endorsements. Tennis sponsors are fancy and they pay well. And so he made the most money of any athlete this year without stepping on the court. That's not even the most we've seen, by the way. In 2021, it was estimated that Conor McGregor made $158 million in 1 year in endorsements alone. But let's finish off this video by looking at the top earning athletes of all time. These numbers, by the way, are accurate as of about a year ago. I haven't been able to reach a couple of these guys to verify my numbers, so we'll just make it accurate as of last year. So at number 5, the richest athlete of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo. So he turned pro in 2002, was it? And he's still playing today. And he earned $1.29 billion. Adjusted for inflation, that's about 1.58 billion with a B. And he's still going strong, so I'm sure we'll eventually see him moving up the list. At number 4, we're entering a golf zone for a bit here. Number 4 is Jack Nicklaus. He went pro in 1961, retired in 2005. Very long career when you're a golfer. And he's earned $870 million. But we're ranking here based on adjustments for inflation. And so his earnings come up to $1.63 billion. At number 3 is Arnold Palmer. Big fan of the Arnold Palmer drink, personally. He went pro in 1954, retired in 2006, and his career earnings are $885 million, which adjusts to $1.7 billion today. At number 2, if we had golfers on this list, you knew he had to be here. This guy turned pro in 1996. I'll give you one more moment to guess who it is. Of course, it's Tiger Woods. He's earned $1.77 billion. He's more current, obviously, but still, adjusted for inflation, his earnings come to about $2.5 billion today. So before we get to number one, I just want to give a couple of shout outs here. So first of all, Serena Williams. She's the only woman to crack that top 50 highest earning athletes of all time. So obviously that's more of an issue with the world of sports than with the athletes themselves, but it makes her earnings all the more impressive. So she comes in at number 38 on the list. She's earned $600 million and obviously turned pro in 95 and retired in 2022. Now I think something else that's impressive for kind of the same reason is when you're the only person from your sport in the top 50, right? Because just like with Serena, to me, it speaks a lot to the value of an athlete. You know, early on in this video, we were flooded with baseball players. Generally, baseball players get big contracts, so it's not to take away from Ohtani, because that's something else, but it makes sense that the biggest contract in the world of sports went to a baseball player. That being said, Conor McGregor is the only MMA fighter to crack the top 50. Similarly, Valentino Rossi is the only motorcycle racer to make the top 50. So it's something special where either you're the only woman, the only person in your sport, or along the same lines, the only person of your nationality to crack the top 50, because it shows that it's almost like a more difficult thing to accomplish. So most people on this list of the top earning athletes of all time are Americans. So shout outs to people like Federer, McGregor, Messi, Neymar, who are the only people from their country to make the top 50 biggest earners. But okay, let's wrap this all up with just by far the biggest earning, highest earning athlete of all time in the history of sports, Michael Jordan. He went pro in 1984, retired in 2003. Let's be real, he made most of his money from Nike. That's it. He continues to do so today. So he's a hard one to catch up to because that Nike money keeps rolling in. So, you know what? Major respect to him and to what he's built. He's worth so much money. I don't have the number top of mind, but I'll make sure to put it with the rankings on the screen. But guys, that's all the numbers I can rattle off for today. Thank you for hanging out with me as usual. Don't forget to tell me in the comments how you think which method should be used to rank athlete earnings. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.